Shirley here with Sirius Stylus Moon. This is Jupiter, our Luna night. And the moon has just crossed Mercury. 11 degree Leo with the sun slowly approaching Regulus. And, oh, that 18 midheaven. I have the jurisdiction perfect nightmare for you. So I haven't figured who is representing Netherlands government and the respective people in the government when it comes to the famous discrete Arboon litigation, which I addressed in my previous channel, Jupiter Point of Thales. But I have the perfect jurisdiction nightmare for you as you are a lawyer of Mark Rutte in that litigation. So basically, if you are the lawyer of Mark Rutte in that litigation, what you're going to be facing, you're going to do a thought experiment. What you're going to be facing are several things. First of all, there are technologies to bring back missing things in Nokia cell phones. So you might be dealing with technology being used against you to bring back something that's supposed to be missing evidence that you would not be getting from your client. And so for various, for those who are not, so first of all, this is not a jurisdiction advice, and and this is not a pipe. I'm not a but this disclaimer and such. But for those of you who are also watching this from outside the jurisdiction rules, then the reason that you would not be getting, let's say, those missing Nokia messages is simply because your client, even if they somehow have access to that, they can't actually show you evidence that would like discriminate them without you using those evidence. So as a lawyer, you have to show what you have. You cannot not show or not address. It is also, when it comes to strategy, you don't want to not address what could vindicate the people that you're representing. And so the second thing that you'd be dealing with is the fact that 7th of October, it wasn't Dick Schoof that was a prime minister, but actually Mark Rutte. And the very first phone call that Benjamin Netanyahu made was to Mark Rutte. You won't be able to ignore that. And so I actually remember joking. I was attending political assassination prevention, attending the case of his opposition, Geert Wilders. And I literally said, well, Geert Wilders should wear a t-shirt that says it was Mark, not me, at 7th of October. I was not prime minister, because he was, like, if not for the something that went on with the government, he would be the prime minister, so he would need that t-shirt. And so another thing that you would have to be dealing with, if it's like in 2025, is the role that Nato had in interfering, okay, in that case. So we got the Nokia nightmare, we got the Gaza nightmare, we got the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu, 6 a.m., countries invaded, everything on war. It's like, who are you gonna call? Mark Rutte. So I don't know if that's missing on the Nokia, but those are completely nightmares, and it's highly unlikely that they're not going to come up with everything that they could ever possibly come up with, which dredges up the old pictures with the Mark and Mark, referring to Mark Rutte and Mark the True, that are kind of like the Donald Trump being buddies with Epstein on photo. And so this is the nightmare. This is the nightmare. What's standing in your favor is the fact that this is one person outside of a complete government, but that in itself is not going to assist you in untrapping your client for what they've done to themselves. Okay? And so, um, what would still be standing in your favor. Oh, and if that's not enough, there are several people that claim to have been threatened on the other side of, and I'm in live present. And so now that you have this perfect jurisdiction nightmare, um, then what would you do with that? Well, you would need to know, and if you are in any such position, then it means that you do know that when it comes to people in a position such as your supposed client, it is a series of um, susceptibility. First of all, being put in perpetual trauma and susceptibility to mind control. Now, that's going to be very difficult on the human ear because we would like to think that everybody in the public arena is actually safe, sane, and rational, but that couldn't be farthest from the truth. Because these are people that are put in perpetual trauma, and so that they will be more susceptible. And in addition, there are extortions where they are filmed, whether they are in a party or drugged up or AI, or but before AI, manipulated into a situation of being susceptible to mind control. And not only that, a part of the rituals and rites that people do to actually be competent in the career, which if you were that lawyer you would know because you would also be a part of these practices. And so is basically to channel, okay, to channel forces. And what are those forces, or what do they invoke? Those are the things that can definitely get tapes that you wouldn't want to look up on Google, and even if they were on Google. So where a point of interference can be is headstrong addressing the technologies that are used to extortion and the perpetual traumas, basically, and doing that through the technology, using the protection a person can have as a targeted individual. You begin to have a point of interference. Now, if you want to get, now in that case, if that was like a normal client, then you'd say, oh, well, this is a mental case and cannot do any of their jobs, or not competent to continue on working. What you would need to address then is that, and it's easier for Netherlands because open dialogue was invented in Netherlands, is that actually the only country that treats psychosis and schizoaffective disorders, which would be like the worst mental case type of possibility, and did, is Finland. And in Finland, people have housing independently of their ability to work, and when they speak, they are believed. Why is Finland, if you think geopolitically, why Finland? It wasn't like they hadn't castrated patients. It wasn't like they hadn't had horrible history, as any country had with that issue. Is because they are in a certain geopolitical position in front of Russia, where they would need all the intelligence that they have. And that means taking all the crazy people that think that the world is spying on them, and understanding that these people are onto something, and the people that give them the housing first and that listen to them and believe them actually have the foreground on intelligence. So when it comes to the fact that your client would be dealing with something between CPTSD, which is prolonged exposure to trauma, to full-blown DID, okay, which is dissociative identity disorder, does not make that client a particular case that is unusual case, okay, which would work against it. Like, hey, why aren't all the others? Because all the others, and this you can show with technology, the traces, the basically there are different brain activities with different channelings, and there's also wave frequency that can be translated around the people, so you can actually see when somebody merged to another when a third party made two parties merge into one another and try to activate them both, kind of like puppeteer them both. So this would be the best point of interference that you could do, because you could show that literally everything works in that way, and so you would not have any jurisdiction without actually finding and who are the people that moved the energy volitionally at a given time, which could be addressed with anomalies in the currency. Okay, I mean, of course, it causes anomalies in the currency, also financially, but I'm talking about the electric currency, and I'm talking about the waves and the frequencies that technology would need to translate. Now, first of all, lo and behold, those technologies exist. This is a part of the extortion. Okay, it's the people that think that they are the puppeteers. No, they are actually being tracked and traced and filmed. It's just kind of like the telegraph. Okay, this conversation, I speak into a phone, and that phone translates that into sound waves. If it's more frequency sensitive, we would get the frequency of Mars, the frequency of Uranus. Okay, more frequency sensitive, it would get the frequencies of people who do astral projection, dream hacking, and so on and so forth. More frequency sensitive, it would get the people that actually place their consciousness and move that around. Could it get the deities and people that they work with? Very likely so. So this doesn't sound like an ideal point of interference, but it does, using technology and addressing it with technology alone, you are able to tell a story that other people are not able to tell. I'm not going to address the full issues with secret societies and the networking that people are kind of like forced to have, but the story of technology simply addresses evidence, and your client would be eligible to protection as a targeted individual by these technologies. And the fact that you show a certain structure keeps you from saying, oh, well, this person is not competent to be, I don't know, head of Nato. Well, then neither is any other person, because currently each person we would put in that position, whether prime minister, which is what is being litigated for, or head of NATO, or any other public position, is subjected to those very structures. So that point of interference, of course, would put the lawyer also in position where they have to defend themselves. But it looks like kind of almost the only thing that one can do without, because if this going to spark up a series of extortion cults playing their card, okay, which I predict that it will, then addressing the structures and technologies behind that and exposing the full picture is actually a point of argumentation in the face of these extortion cults. Okay, and this is where, when it comes to jurisdiction and evidence-based, not just medicine, but evidence-based jurisdiction, which was the late Larry Loudon, okay, began with the philosophy of science, and then he moved to philosophy of law. Then it is indeed technology that brings something from this is a conspiracy theory into the field where you can actually observe and use it as evidence. That being said, technology serves another role here, which is to bypass certain oaths that were made in certain secret society, and it does bypass, let alone the fact that they were never informed consent when it comes to those secret societies. Okay, so this is how a person can use the technology, and the point of interference of technology, and the Finland study case of treating mental health, so you don't get into the mental health loop with your patient, now with your client. um, Now, of course, if Mark Rutte was involved during the time when he was prime minister in depriving people of having housing first and open dialogue, that would be another caveat that he would need to face. It's not something that's completely undeterrable, but definitely whoever blackmailed or whoever extorted him to do that is going to be a part of the people that will have to face charges. And that makes it a megalithic jurisdiction process. It is completely discreet. I don't even know who is representing, like, the litigated forces. There was one channel that showed those who represent the Schoof, but nothing more, and that's in Netherlands. So there is an entire embargo on information when it comes to that litigation. Um, and this is the one thing where you could use that crisis to completely expose, and the Saturn Neptune here really contribute to that, to completely expose the underlying structures that would affect every single person who would take on a political position or a military secretarial or a military elite position or a business position. Okay, so this is absolutely also valid for the Epstein list, and a lot of people are like, when we will see the Epstein list? Well, you will see a list of names that were mind controls by third parties and fourth parties, and all of that on use of astral projection, drugs, perpetual trauma, and many things that are very, very challenging to explain to the common ear. However, the masses of targeted individuals actually get that. Okay, so the opportunity is absolutely ripe. And it's one of the only ways where I can see people coming out of that, what seems to be one giant jurisdiction nightmare, um, and still not only surviving but thriving through that by limiting all those practices, putting them in the light, and limiting all those practices that relied on a cult of extortion and blackmail, and all the things that would make anybody undermine themselves in any public and political position. So this is also would avoid any further complications, like more death threats, coming to other people that could absolutely use that against. Okay, and not only that, is those the using other measures to those death threats, like astral projection, targeting individuals, and military technologies to stalk people. This, like, you better have this card if you're the representing lawyer of, let's say, the Dutch government or Mark Rutte for the record. Then you rather have that card being exposed in your hands than being played against you when you're completely unready for the technology transformation to uphold, which will happen. Okay, so yeah, that is what I have to say. The many attempts to control information media, that's something that's been ongoing since 2020. The litigation been ongoing since 2020, and then the Gaza thing was just added to it after 2023, I believe. And Saturn here ruling over Pluto, so scientific revolution, the many attempts to control things, both target the founders of those military intelligences, so, AI products, but also it's kind of like, hey, if the card of exposure is going to be used and the sky is ripe for it to be, it's the age of air, okay? This is the strategy of hiding and putting a cloak of invisibility is just not going to yield. And if it is the age of air, then you would prefer that card played in your hand rather than used as diversion tactic by the cult of extortion that want to rejuvenate the people that have served their purpose in as far as those cults go.